Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I would like to thank Donis for hosting this conference so that we can discuss the importance of film incentives. Film incentives are a great and easy way to help spark investment, and I know the government is considering this, and I would encourage them to adopt film incentives as soon as possible. But admittedly, when I first arrived in Belgrade, I was not very familiar with film incentives, and I didn't understand the effect that they could have on the economy. I don't think that the importance of these incentives is self-evident. I mean, for starters, when you think of a company or organization that needs incentives, Hollywood is not the first one that comes to mind, and at least it wasn't for me. But over the past year, I've come to appreciate the role film incentives play both in financing films and in stimulating the economy. In terms of film finance, the incentives play two key roles. First, obviously, tax incentives decrease the cost of production, which is important because films are expensive. And this is another reason why the incentives matter, because there's value in art that should not be determined by profits alone. And that's why the government typically helps sponsors the arts, because art is a public good. Art is culture, and culture should not be determined or restrained by money. And second, despite the fact that movies are big business, investing in film is risky because you can't predict what people like or will want to watch. So if you're a filmmaker, you can't just go to the bank and take out a loan for millions of dollars without any collateral. Unless you're Steven Spielberg, the banks are going to laugh at you. But if you're a filmmaker, you can use the tax incentives to secure credit from the banks, which will help you finance the film. And in this way, incentives are crucial to financing films. And so that's why the film incentives matter to filmmakers. But I don't want to focus on why they matter to them. I want to focus on why it matters to Serbia that filmmakers bring their movies here. Film is an enormous global business. In 2013, revenues from the film industry were almost $90 billion, and they're expected to reach $110 billion by 2018. And the US obviously is known for our film industry, and it's a major contributor to our economy. The US film industry is comprised of 108,000 businesses. It supports 1.9 million jobs, and it pays $113 billion in wages. And film industry jobs are good jobs. They have an average salary that's 42% higher than the national average in the United States. And the good thing about movies is that although they're produced in a studio, they aren't made in a vacuum. Making a movie involves many different types of businesses. It's not just the actors, directors, and crew. Films need caterers, accountants, dry cleaners, and makeup artists, just to name a few. So while there are 108,000 businesses directly involved in film, the movie industry contributes over $40 billion to more than 330,000 businesses in the United States. And that means for every one business directly involved in film, there are 3 others that are supported indirectly. And when you're looking at the value of an investment, an important thing to consider is what economists call the multiplier. And the multiplier measures how much an investment leads to an increase in national income. And our Department of Commerce estimates that films have a multiplier of 2.5, meaning if a filmmaker invests $1 million to make a movie, the actual benefit to society is worth $2.5 million. And the reason film does this, as I mentioned, is because films support many businesses and jobs. The crew has to eat, so they hire a caterer. That increases catering companies' revenues, and they need to buy food, so they help local farmers. Employees have higher disposable incomes, which they spend, et cetera, et cetera. And because of this investment ecosystem, the movie industry, like tourism, is a great way to drive local development and support small businesses. And film incentives are a legitimate and effective way to attract investment that will increase profits for many other local industries. The incentives are vital for film producers, and that's why having them will lead to more movies being produced. I went to college in Massachusetts, and in the 7 years before Massachusetts had a film incentive program, there were 10 movies produced worth $67 million. In the 3 years after Massachusetts introduced an incentive program, they had 26 movies made worth $676 million. And Croatia, which we've already mentioned, implemented their program in 2012. In the first year, international production spent 3.3 million euros. The next year, it doubled to 6.6 million. Last year, it doubled again to 13.2 million euros. And in the first quarter of this year, they've had 12 international productions apply for the incentives with a projected local spend of 27.6 million euros. And it's not that Massachusetts or Croatia are inherently better places to film than Serbia. It's just they have the legal framework in place to allow filmmakers to produce there. And in the future, Serbia can attract this kind of investment with a proper incentive program. And some people might be concerned about the effects of incentives on the budget. It is no secret that the fiscal situation here in Serbia is difficult. But data from around the world suggests that film incentives are a net benefit to the state budget and economy. And that's probably why so many countries are increasing their rebates. Every euro in incentives attracts 5.32 euros in foreign film investment. Every euro paid through the incentives generates an estimated 13 euros throughout the entire economy. And in terms of the state budget directly, for every euro paid through film incentives from the budget, the government earns 1.46 euros from tax revenue. Now, if every time I gave you a euro, you gave me 1.46 in return, that'd be a pretty good deal. In fact, if anyone here wants to make that deal with me, please come talk to me after. And so, apart from the fact that the incentives are self-financing and help fill the budget, they also help the local film industry. A study by the Croatian Audiovisual Center found that the incentives increase inter-European production and bring in various cultural and economic benefits. Foreign direct investment brings in new ideas, techniques, and knowledge, which makes the local industry and economy stronger. And in the same way, film incentives will help the local movie industry. They will mean better, more competitive wages, knowledge transfer, higher quality productions, and increased opportunities for Serbian workers. The most recent major film shot here was November Man. And the November Man production created 150 direct jobs in Serbia and had over 1,000 extras. They spent around $5 million locally, and if you use the multiplier of 2.5, that's economic activity worth $12.5 million. But apart from that direct economic benefit, November Man was shown in over 2,700 theaters in the United States and grossed over $25 million at the box office. And if you consider that an average movie ticket in the US is about $8, that means over 3 million people in the US got to see Belgrade on the big screen. And many more are continuing to see the movie because it's streaming on Netflix. November Man was also shown in dozens of countries. It was shown in Brazil, Egypt, India, South Africa, and the UAE, just to name a few. So all around the world, people had direct exposure to Belgrade, perhaps for the first time. And that brings me to my next point, that's not always captured in the numbers directly. But it also has the potential to stimulate the economy, and that's tourism. Tourism represents 9% of the global economy and supports 1 out of every 11 jobs. Serbia's tourism industry is growing, and it has so much more potential, especially now with the huge success of Air Serbia and possibility for direct flights to the US. Serbia is becoming more connected with countries around the world. Air Serbia is making it easier to fly here, and film, because of its effect on tourism, will give more people reason to fly here. Film is a major component of tourism. Movies change our perceptions of places or show us places we never would have seen otherwise. In 2014, a tourism research firm found that 45 million international tourists chose a destination primarily because they saw a movie or TV show filmed there. And a 2009 report by the British film industry found that 10% of the total value of British tourism came as a direct result of how it is portrayed in TV and film. Bolivia had a 30% increase in tourists after the Motorcycle Diaries. The movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio increased Thailand's popularity by 19%. And perhaps a better example, one that I've already mentioned and everyone else has already mentioned, is next door in Croatia. I went to Dubrovnik last summer with my siblings. And the main reason we chose Dubrovnik over, say, Kotor or anywhere else along the coast, you can probably guess, is because my brother is a huge fan of Game of Thrones. I have never seen Game of Thrones, but I can tell you where every scene ever has been shot in Dubrovnik, because my brother told me. And he's not alone in that. Thousands of people are going to Dubrovnik because of that show. And the mayor there estimates that half of Croatia's 10% increase in tourism is a direct result of Game of Thrones. And so film allows us to see places and experience things that we never would have been able to otherwise. And when I'm thinking about a place to vacation, I don't want to guess whether or not it's somewhere I'd like to go or research blindly in the hopes of finding a good spot. Because there are simply too many places in the world for that. But that's where films come in, because films put places on the map. How many of us knew how beautiful New Zealand was before Lord of the Rings? Some of us probably did. Probably some of us in New Zealand knew that, but I had no idea. But now, as evidenced by the hundreds of thousands of tourists and $7 billion, yes, billion dollars in tourism revenue from the films, it's clear that we now know how amazing New Zealand is. And many of us will develop an emotional connection through movies. You feel something about a place that had never been on your radar before, and you become connected to a fictional history, like my brother with Dubrovnik. But it doesn't have to be a happy, positive movie. All genres of movies are good for tourism. Even horror movies have this effect. When I first moved to Washington, D.C., the first tourist attraction I went to see was not a museum or a monument. Those things are far too cultured for me. No, the first place I wanted to see was the house and now infamous steps from the movie The Exorcist. And while that is perhaps a bit odd, I'm not the only one doing this. Other people do this too. So the movie Deliverance, a gruesome story about A gruesome story about 4 men canoeing down a river in rural Georgia, which is responsible for traumatizing probably every middle-aged man in America, led to a huge increase in whitewater rafting excursions in the county where the film was shot. Even today, more than 40 years after the movie came out, rafting is a $20 million a year industry in a county of 16,000 people, and tourism remains their #1 source of revenue. And I highly doubt the increase of tourists there is because people in the US watched Deliverance and thought, what happened to the protagonist sounded like a pretty good time. No. Instead, they saw the movie, saw that Georgia is beautiful, and were able to distinguish the movie setting from the movie plot. And Serbia has a rich history in the movie industry, but I think it could have an even brighter future. Serbia has so much to offer and so much untapped potential. When the TV series Around the World in 80 Days was filmed here, Serbia, because of its diverse landscape and architecture, was able to stand in for 18 countries, and Belgrade alone represented 7 capital cities from around the world. And this is part of the reason that Serbia is a great place to film. But it's more than just the setting. The people here are so talented. The crew from November Man had nothing but amazing things to say about Serbia. The production designer said it was a wonderful place to shoot, and the director's children are begging him to take them back here. And Pierce Brosnan told reporters in the US, quote, "The people in Serbia were just outstanding. The crew and the cast, they welcomed us in. Everyone got behind the project." And so far I focused on the economic benefits of these incentives, and I hope I've helped convince you that they are a good investment based on their economic merits. But the significance of film is more than just finance and numbers. It's in its soft power. Film can rebrand and advertise a country. Movies can shape people's perceptions or be a first impression. And when people read Pierce Brosnan's interview or see a movie filmed here, they have a connection to Serbia. They might not have known about Serbia before, but now they do. They hear that Serbs are warm, hardworking people, and they see that Kalemegdan is gorgeous. And these are the kind of messages about Serbia that more people need to hear. They need to hear how welcoming it is. They need to know how talented the people are, and they need to see how beautiful Serbia is. And if you can increase revenues and make money along the way, well then that's all the better. But that's what these incentives offer, an opportunity to increase investment, promote tourism, and showcase everything that Serbia and Serbians have to offer. And after living here for over a year and traveling throughout the country, I can honestly say that Serbia deserves to be seen on the big screen. Actually, people should see and experience Serbia in person, but it seems like the big screen is a pretty good place to start. Thank you.